Battle Royale. It started as a niche mod, just a quirky experiment where 100 players dropped onto one map and fought until only one was left standing. That tiny idea exploded into one of the biggest revolutions in gaming. PUBG brought it into the spotlight, but it was Fortnite that made it a full-blown cultural phenomenon. Suddenly, every major studio needed a Battle Royale mode. Call of Duty launched Warzone, and Apex Legends dropped out of nowhere and took over Twitch. The genre was fast, chaotic, and endlessly replayable. You never knew what would happen next, and that unpredictability kept players hooked. Streamers made entire careers off last-second wins. Kids were doing Fortnite dances in real life. It quickly became a key component of players' lifestyle. But like every gold rush, saturation followed. Developers started pushing copycat modes, and fans grew more selective. Battle Royale was still huge, but its dominance forced the entire industry to evolve. In the next trend, it was already creeping in slowly. Open world games. There was a time when open world games were rare. GTA 3, Elder Scrolls, maybe Zelda Wind Waker if you squinted. But by the mid-2010s, it felt like every single game needed to be open world to be taken seriously. Developers promised freedom, immersion, and hundreds of hours of gameplay. Suddenly, even franchises known for linear design were going open world. Halo, Sonic, Metal Gear. At first, it felt revolutionary. Exploring vast landscapes with no loading screens, it was magic. But the charm wore off when players realized most of that space was just filler. Endless towers to climb, maps bloated with icons, side quests that felt like errands. It was less about adventure and more about managing a to-do list. Still, open worlds weren't going anywhere. When done right, like in Breath of the Wild or Red Dead Redemption 2, they redefined what games could be. But when done wrong, they became a chore. And that obsession with size, it was about to create even bigger problems. Motion controls. When the Nintendo Wii launched in 2006, nobody expected it to flip the entire industry upside down. While Sony and Microsoft were flexing graphics and horsepower, Nintendo handed players a wand and said, swing it. And people did. Wii Sports had grandparents bowling in their living rooms. Doctors used it in rehab therapy. The Wii was outselling everything, and suddenly, motion controls weren't a gimmick. They were the future. Or so it seemed. Sony rushed out the PlayStation Move. Microsoft dropped Kinect with no controller at all. Everyone wanted a piece of that casual gaming goldmine. But there was one big problem. Motion controls worked best in party games and novelties. For traditional gamers, wagging a remote couldn't replace a controller. And after the hype died down, reality set in. Most Kinect games were clunky. The Move was quietly buried. Even Nintendo moved on. Motion control wasn't the future of all gaming. It was a wild detour, one that made billions, then vanished just as fast. But the next trend wouldn't just be casual. It would go fully mobile. Mobile games. It started innocent enough. A few puzzle games, some tap-to-win simulators, maybe a digital pet or two. But then came Angry Birds, Temple Run, and Candy Crush. Suddenly, mobile gaming wasn't just for killing time. It was big business. Then Clash of Clans and Pokemon Go took things nuclear. Overnight, everyone from kids to CEOs were glued to their phones. Game devs realized they didn't need to sell you a full game. They could give it to you free and rake in cash with microtransactions. It worked. Too well. People spending thousands on in-game perks started fueling billion-dollar profits. Traditional studios couldn't ignore it. Even franchises like Call of Duty, Diablo, and Final Fantasy launched mobile spin-offs. The result? More players than ever, but also more games designed around keeping you addicted, not entertained. It was a new kind of gameplay. Easy to start, hard to stop. And as phones got better, mobile games started eating into console territory. But not every tech trend was welcome. The next one? It forced players to stay connected, whether they wanted to or not. Always online DRM. You'll need an internet connection to play. No big deal, right? But then players started realizing what that really meant. Games that wouldn't boot if servers were down. Single-player titles that kicked you out mid-session. Launches ruined by overloaded servers. It all traced back to one thing, DRM, digital rights management. Publishers said it was about stopping piracy, but to gamers, it felt like they were being punished for buying legit copies. The backlash was immediate. SimCity melted down on day one. Diablo 3 had players stuck in login queues just to play solo. And when Microsoft announced the Xbox One would require a constant internet connection, fans revolted, hard. The company was forced to reverse course. The message was clear. Players wanted ownership, not babysitting. Yet even today, some games quietly sneak it in. And if the servers ever shut down, your purchase could vanish overnight. But if that wasn't frustrating enough, studios had another plan to keep games alive and players spending nonstop. Game remasters. Who doesn't love a classic remaster? Beloved games getting a second life on modern hardware. Halo Master Chief Collection, Crash Bandicoot Insane Trilogy, Final Fantasy VII Remake. Fans were all in. These weren't just ports, Some were total overhauls with updated visuals, new mechanics, and hours of added content. But it didn't take long for studios to notice that nostalgia sells, and it sells big. Soon, the market was flooded. Games barely 5 years old were getting remastered. Some didn't change anything at all, just slapped on a new price tag. Others shipped broken or stripped down. What started as a way to honor the past became a lazy cash grab. Fans were paying again for games they already owned, sometimes multiple times across generations. And yet, we kept buying, because revisiting those worlds still hit something emotional. The industry knew it, and they weren't just re-releasing games anymore, they were mining your memories. Live service games. Back in the day, you would buy a game and that was it. No updates, no patches, no battle passes. But that all changed when developers realized they could keep games alive and profitable long after launch. The live service model was born. Instead of one finished product, you got a living platform. Destiny led the charge, then came Fortnite, Warframe, GTA Online. Seasons, events, skins, games never truly ended, and for a while, it worked. Players had a reason to come back daily. Devs had a steady income stream, but there was a dark side. Content started launching half-baked. Roadmaps replaced actual features. Games like Anthem and Marvel's Avengers promised years of support and died within months. Even beloved franchises fell into the trap, prioritizing cosmetics over gameplay. Live service wasn't just a business model, it was a grind, and gamers were getting tired. Not every title could pull it off. The gold rush was unsustainable, and while some players stuck around, many were burning out. Ironically, the next big trend felt like pure randomness, but it turned into a legal nightmare. Loot boxes. What first felt fresh and harmless sparked an immense amount of controversy over time. You would open a mystery box, get a fun surprise, maybe a cool skin or a rare weapon, but loot boxes quickly turned into one of gaming's biggest scandals. Titles like Overwatch, FIFA, and Battlefront 2 built entire systems around randomized rewards. And the kicker? You could pay real money for more chances. Players started comparing it to gambling, and they weren't wrong. Some countries launched investigations. Belgium and the Netherlands even banned certain games over it. Meanwhile, parents were horrified to find kids raking up charges chasing virtual prizes. The backlash peaked with Battlefront 2, where EA faced such intense criticism that they pulled microtransactions days before launch. Suddenly, loot box became a dirty word. Studios scrambled to replace them with battle passes, cosmetics, or direct purchases, but the damage was done. Trust had been broken, and even as the industry tried to move on, the effects lingered. The lesson? Gamers didn't mind spending money, they just hated being manipulated. Indie games. While AAA studios were chasing graphics, budgets, and live services, a different revolution was brewing, one led by passion, not profits. The indie scene exploded in the late 2000s with games like Braid, Super Meat Boy, and Limbo. These weren't backed by billion-dollar publishers, they were made by tiny teams or sometimes just one person. But what they lacked in size, they made up for in creativity. No bloated open worlds, no manipulative monetization, just fresh ideas and tight gameplay. Then came Undertale, Stardew Valley, and Hollow Knight, games that built massive cult followings with zero corporate backing. And thanks to platforms like Steam and later the Nintendo Switch eShop, indie devs could finally reach the masses. They didn't just survive, they thrived. Some even outsold AAA titles. Suddenly, major studios were copying indie ideas. Pixel art, farming sims, things once considered niche became the new standard. Indie games proved that heart could beat the hype. And while not every title was a hit, the floodgates were open. VR. Virtual reality was supposed to change everything back in the 90s, and then it flopped. Clunky headsets, motion sickness, and sky-high prices made it a joke. But somehow, it came back, and this time it stuck. The Oculus Rift reignited interest. Then came the HTC Vive, PlayStation VR, and eventually the Meta Quest. Suddenly, VR wasn't just sci-fi, it was accessible. Games like Beat Saber, Half-Life Alyx, and Boneworks showed what the tech could really do. It wasn't just a gimmick anymore. You could move, interact, and fully exist inside a game. But even with all the innovation, VR still wasn't mainstream. High prices and limited libraries held it back. Still, it proved something important. Gamers were ready to experiment. They didn't just want the better graphics, they wanted new experiences. And whether VR ever takes over or stays a niche, it signaled a bigger truth. Trends come and go, but gaming will never stop evolving. The next revolution could be right around the corner, and nobody will see it coming. Thanks for watching. Subscribe for more.